mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Part 6, Episode 6, the finale of HBO's limited series, We Own This City. This episode left a lot more talking points than I expected coming in. I figured it would wrap up kind of normally and we'd find out what happened to these guys, and we did, but there's so many interesting conversation topics to have, I think, coming out of this show. And I'm going to start with the biggest one, Sean Suiter. I had a theory last week that obviously did not pan out. I thought it was a great theory. It is a great theory. It was just wrong. But I had a great theory about how I thought Sean connected into the rest of the story. I was wrong as shit, but I also tried to keep any information that might exist out there as to how all of this ends. I tried to kind of stay away from it, just to not get spoiled too much. Like, I had loose ideas of, I know that a lot of these guys went to prison, stuff like that. But I managed to avoid the Sean Suiter thing, and that left me pretty shocked at the end of this episode. But my theory didn't pan out. I thought it was a good theory, but what happened here, I think, is really worth talking about, because there are conspiracy theorists out there that believe that he did not actually kill himself, and that he was killed maybe by police who wanted to stop his testimony, which is ironic since they were all convicted without his testimony anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But these theories exist, and I don't want to talk about whether or not, I don't want to give too much credence to the theories as much as I want to talk about what the show thought about it. Because I thought it was interesting that the show was very clear on where it stands as far as whether or not they felt he committed suicide. The show clearly felt that he killed himself. And they laid the groundwork for this in previous episodes as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But they were not as clear with whether or not he had reason to kill himself. The show was very ambiguous about whether or not he was involved in anything that Wayne was up to. And I thought that was interesting, and it made me reflect on why. Why would they not take a stance on whether or not he did stuff, but take a very strong stance on the result of which, if you think he killed himself, what reason would he have other than the fact that he was involved? So it's interesting that they made that decision, and I think it's kind of to maintain some sort of I don't say happy ending, but some respect, put some respect on Sean Suiter's name, essentially. He might have done some dirt way back in the day, but he was a guy who got clean. I don't say got clean like he was on drugs, but he was a guy who stopped being dirty, started working homicides, and left that past behind him because he had issues with it. So you look at it as this is a guy who was commendable, but has some shit that he experienced in his past, and they didn't want that to define him. The show creators didn't want that to define him. Because if you see Sean taking the money with everyone else, then Sean's just like Jermel, he's just like Gondo, he's just like Wayne, he's just like Herschel, he's just like all these guys. But if you leave it ambiguous where you don't really know what he did, all you know is who he is now, it gives a way of giving him a level of respect that the show wasn't interested in giving the more overtly dirty cops. So I thought it was interesting that they made that decision. So I listened to the official podcast, and it had Jamie Hector, who plays Sean Suiter. It had David Simon, and it had George Pelecanos, all on it. Though they're the co-creators and writers, I believe. And they said on there, they being Pelecanos and Simon, that they believe that he killed himself. And they run off a little bit of evidence. The first thing is, I believe it was David Simon who said that what they filmed was what they had as far as visual evidence of what happened at that scene. So what I mean is, they said that there was a camera outside one of the apartment buildings, and it showed Sean hiding behind that van, but pacing back and forth nervously and looking around, waiting for cars to go by to make sure there were no other witnesses. That him hiding behind that van, he was hiding way longer than the show portrayed him as hiding. And then after he runs into the alley and the shooting happens, which we don't see, we only see the aftermath when his partner comes around the corner. And that same footage exists, which I started to watch this documentary. It's called, it's about this So it's about Sean specifically. It's called Soul of. I try not to do this while I'm recording the podcast, but I want to look this up, and I'm going to look this up, and I'm going to tell you why, because I want you guys to either watch it or come back here later, because I'm going to watch it. But it's a documentary about Sean Suiter, and like I said, it's a documentary, not a movie, and it's directed by the woman who played Kima on The Wire. It's called The Slow Hustle. It's on HBO Max right now. I think it came out in December. So I watched the first maybe like 10 minutes or so of The Slow Hustle, and you see the body cam footage from Sean's partner. And it's the exact same. They filmed it in the exact same place. They had his body laying the exact same. They had the reactions by and large the same. And so they keep all that in there. They keep that authenticity. But what I thought was interesting is that they said that, we filmed this exactly with what we had. Like we didn't put any of our own commentary on it. We did our best to emulate what we saw. And we didn't put anything in any of our own judgment in that, which is true if you talk about just that scene. But they put a whole lot of their own feelings into whether or not they felt like he committed suicide. Like, for instance, who would have told them that Sean Suiter walked around his house while his family was asleep and looked at his kids and looked at his pictures the night before this happened? Nobody would have told them that. Who would have told them that Sean Suiter was having trouble pouring himself a cup of coffee because his hands were shaking so much? Nobody would have told them that. He couldn't have told him he's dead. So, like, before then, I was, like, while I'm watching this, I'm trying to think, like, okay, could they have gotten this information legitimately? There's no way they could have gotten that information legitimately because the only person who would have known about it is dead. So they very much had their own beliefs on what they feel he did, but were very ambiguous about why he would have done it. And I thought that was an interesting decision to make. I'm not making any commentary or any kind of giving an opinion or an assessment of it. I'm just stating this is what they clearly did. Do with it what you will. But I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's very clear that, I asked this a couple episodes back, like, why is he so upset? If he didn't do anything, like, is he worried about whether or not he did something that's going to come to light? Is he worried about being associated with these? Like all these things. But when you look back at it, you could see why he'd be concerned if he was actually participating at that time, which I think the show wants us now to believe that he did. But they also don't want to, like I said, you show him taking money from Wayne, he's the same as everyone else. And I don't think they wanted to paint him in that light. But again, interesting decision on the part of the show. So, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Sean was dirty, like, in the past? Do you think he killed himself? Do you think he was killed? A couple other thoughts about the evidence that they had. So, Pelicanos mentioned, he said, I firmly believe he committed suicide. I'm certain. He said certain, I think, or close to certain. And he ran off some evidence like the fact that Suiter's hand was still, radio was still in his hand at the time. And he's like, if your active theory is that he grappled with somebody and that person shot him with his own gun, what are you doing holding on to your radio? You either going to drop it or you're going to use it as a weapon. And they found it still in his hand, undamaged, with no DNA on it. So essentially, if you buy the idea that he was fighting with somebody and that person shot him with his own gun, you have to accept the fact that he was fighting somebody with a self-given handicap of only having one hand because he's stubbornly holding onto this radio the whole time. They mentioned that he fell over on his gun, which they say it plays out like that. It wouldn't have happened that way if he had been grappling with somebody else. It was kind of like, because if you think if you kneel down and you shoot yourself, you are liable to fall on top of your gun, stomach down. But if you're fighting with somebody, what are the odds of that happening? They mentioned that he had blood on the inside of his the cuff of his shirt, and they talked about like the dynamics of how if you're grappling with somebody in that moment, how would you get your own blood in the cuff, inside the cuff of a shirt? But you would if you're doing one of these and your cuff is loose. Of course, and the biggest piece of evidence is that there's no, it's only his gun casings that were found on the scene. And 2 were fired into the ground, 2 I think give the illusion of a struggle, and then 1 that hits him in the head. So that's the evidence that they mentioned on the podcast for whether or not he committed suicide. So do with that what you will, but interesting discussion to have. And lastly, on that topic, I'm going to watch this documentary, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to give any information that I think will add some context to this, to Sean's situation, and I'm going to put it in a comment, and then I'm going to pin the comment. So come back in a few days and see if I've added that comment, and it'll be pinned to the top. So, and that'll provide, so if you don't want to watch it for an hour and a half, I'll provide you with any kind of necessary, pertinent information to that situation. So I spent 10 minutes on Sean. I want to talk about Wayne a little bit. I want to talk about Wayne's nature, because I thought this episode was interesting for Wayne, because we see several moments where he's not only claiming to not be dirty, he's downright offended by it. The scene where the guy threw the gun in front of them, and he's like, he tries to let the guy call his girl, and then the guy was like, "Oh, they planted a gun on me." He hangs it up, and he's like, "Why would you do that?" Like, you know, he's offended. Like, why would you paint me to be a dirty cop? All this kind of stuff. And I'm like, is Wayne telling this story to like paint himself as a good guy because it's so by the books? But then I think my bigger question is Wayne a pathological liar? Like, he will just lie and he knows he's lying and he doesn't give a shit? Or is Wayne like a sociopath who truly really does believe that he didn't do anything wrong? And I can't tell. And I find that interesting, that I don't know if this guy knows that he's a piece of shit. I don't think he knows. I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know if he knows. I don't know if he doesn't. I lean toward him just being a liar. Like, I don't think he actually believes he didn't do anything wrong, especially because the show kind of shows him making these conscious decisions, especially on the heels of being made to look inadequate. So you got your boys roasting you over not knowing how to pronounce Patron, or you getting roasted over bringing the little crabs, like whatever. It shows him, and I mentioned this in whatever episode, it shows him as somebody who has a whole lot of self-esteem issues, and he wants to impress others. And what does he do when he's getting money? He's throwing it around. Hey, here's the money. Yeah. Oh, we banked it big. Here's some money for you. Here's some money for me. Like, he wants people to like him. And I think if he admits that he's dirty or that he did these things, people will not like him. But if he claims to be clean, the people who don't like him are just wrong. They just don't know him. And then he has all the people who do know him, all these celebrated cops, all these cops who celebrate him, I should say, who feel like he's a good guy. So, yeah, I don't know where I fall on that. Let me know what you think in the comments. But yeah, I'm not sure. He stands by not having planted the drugs that Suter found, which to me was one of the more obvious situations that showed that he was involved. And I don't know, again, if this is the show giving its own opinion on what they think happened, or if there's... I mean, it has to be to a degree, because, again, thinking about if somebody wrote up a report of what happened at the scene, no one's going to write up, Wayne told Sean to check the car for 18th time and then looked really interested in what was going to happen. I don't think that was part of what happened, but that's what happened in the show. You know, we already know the car's been searched. He sends Sean over to do it. He looks really invested in what's going to happen. Like, he knows Sean is going to find something. Sean finds something looking confused, like it was just under the seat. And then later, I don't know if it's the same episode or the next one, we have the scene of the guy who came to plant the gun for Wayne later. So this shows a pattern of Wayne having other people plant stuff for him, and then having other people find it to remove himself as someone who might be looked at as being involved in this. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he probably didn't plant the drugs, which if you're a sociopath like him, I didn't plant the drugs is probably enough. Even though he might have the full knowledge, I called up so-and-so, I had so-and-so put drugs in there, and then I had someone else find them. I did not plant the drugs, and he probably can do some mental gymnastics in his head to make that okay. My question is, did Sean plant the drugs? Because we don't see anyone else come up there, but we saw the other guy come up and put the gun behind a tire in a later episode, or later in that episode. So I don't know. I don't think Wayne did, but again, I think Sean did, but I think the show doesn't want to throw any dirt on the name of a dead man who can't defend himself. So they make all of Sean's involvement ambiguous, when the reality might have been Sean might have been just as knee deep in that shit as Jamel and Gondo and all those guys. And they say on here, it's almost a one-line throwaway that you might almost kind of miss it. But they say that Jamel was going to say that Sean took money. And they say this in the podcast, too, that they call him by his last name, which I forget. But they said that Jamel was going to say that Sean took money. So, I don't know. I still think it's an interesting conversation to have. Like, did he do this stuff? Or are they just trying to make it seem like, put it in question because they don't want to throw dirt on the name of a dead man? But let's see. Where do I want to talk? Where else did I want to go with Wayne? Oh yeah, like I was saying, the one conversation where the guy threw the gun, that almost seemed fake to me. Like no way he really said this. Like, this seems almost like a performance, but no one's here. So then I put in my notes, like, is he telling this story to somebody? So yeah, then I said that you're not gonna call me a fucking piece of shit. Like, I'm a good cop. Like, did he do that? Was he telling that story? But then later we see him in the strip club with Gondo and Jamel, and he has that same kind of energy. But then he kind of shifts to like, well, we got this big job, but you two, just the three of us got to do it, and I can't be involved in it. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how they played that up. I already talked. Oh, okay. I was going to talk about the planted gun, but I'm sorry, the planted drugs. But I already talked about that. I like the montage where Wayne says something like nobody would tell on him, and then they like play like seven cops saying that Wayne was terrible, and then that he was heavily into the drugs and all this kind of shit. Somebody gives the name of the bail bondsman. The bail bondsman come in ready to tell everybody's business, which I thought was really actually pretty funny that this guy was willing to just tell everybody's business. But I think that guy, and they say it, the one character says it in the FBI guy when they're in the courtroom, like that guy being willing to tell everything, and then we see Wayne seeing that in the newspaper that the bail bondsman was willing to cooperate. That guy saying everything, I think, was enough to make Wayne change his mind. So I agree with I agree with the cop. Like, my opinion matters, but I agree with the FBI guy that Wayne was probably willing to go to trial because he was so, again, I think it's partial sociopath too, so convinced that he hadn't done anything wrong that he could go to trial and get off. But I think the bail bondsman being willing to talk changed that, which again is an indication that he knows that he did something wrong, or else he wouldn't have changed his mind. It was just like he thought he could get away with it because he was so arrogant and he'd been getting away with it for so long. So I thought that was good. And then I want to also add, I lost that thought. I'll come back to it when I get it back. It was something about that montage, and then everybody saying that Wayne was dirty with the drug. Oh, now I remember. The very end of the episode, what I've been waiting for is episode 1, when Wayne opens up that closet in that house they raided. He sees something, we don't see what it is, and he looks very pleased. I thought this episode was about to end without addressing that, and it doesn't. I think it's like the second to last scene. We see it, and he opens it up, and it's a bag of money and drugs and whatnot, and I thought to myself, no way they set up something at the beginning of episode 1, pay it off at the end of episode 6, and it's just the 1700th example of Wayne taking money. Like, there's no way it's that simple. But I looked at it again, and I think what we're meant to take away from this, and you can give me your thoughts. They didn't address this in the official podcast. I was hoping that they would, but my thought is that when he opens that closet, that looks like the black duffel bags that the police use, and that Wayne has used, like whenever they, throwing money into a bag, or, they open up a trunk and there's money in a bag. It's like those thick black duffel bags. And I'm wondering if we are meant to deduce that the contents of that bag was the same shit that Wayne took from somewhere else, sold to the bail bondsman, or gave to the bail bondsman to sell, and then that bail bondsman then sold it to whoever's house this is that they're raiding. And it's like this weird kind of like circle of life with Wayne's ill-gotten drugs and money. And he's just like, oh, this is wild. I stole this before, and now here I am seizing it legally, and my whole plan is coming to fruition. So he swipes the money. He can now turn in the drugs. and now he has the money from drugs that he gave to that guy to sell. I don't know, but I think we're supposed to take away from it that was Wayne's stuff that he gave to the bail bondsman to sell. The bail bondsman sold it to whoever house this is they were raiding, and he was looking like, wow, I found my own shit. I believe that's what we were supposed to take from it. But let me know what you think. I haven't heard anything that really addressed that yet. I'll probably listen to a couple more podcast episodes and see if anyone does, but that was my take. So 2 more things before I wrap up. I enjoyed the consent decree convo, which is like weird, kind of nerdy shit. But the idea of like, okay, we have this court mandated thing that says the police got to do this, 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 and this. And the police are like, Commissioner Davies? I don't know. He's like, we can't afford that. Can you guys give us some money from that? And they're like, well, we can only pull it from these 3 places. And she's like, oh, we're not taking no money from my babies. With her corrupt ass, like, they said she ends up in prison for like tax evasion or some shit with her corrupt ass. Oh, we ain't taking no money from my babies. You gotta find where you gonna take money from. And I just thought that was interesting. The idea of, you have these things that you have to do to fix the police force and make everything right. And you guys are squabbling about the money. And he's like, I can't cut overtime because I already got a bunch of cops that don't want to do no work anyway. If I cut overtime, then the ones who do want to do it aren't going to do anything. And the other guy is like, man, I understand. Ain't nobody got no money. Man, if only we had $6 million that we didn't give to Freddie Gray's family. I thought that was like a great line. Like, you over here bitching about money, but we'd have had $6 million. Well, what he says, something like, how many body cameras do you think we could have got with that? They had $6 million that they paid out to Freddie Gray's family because of what his cops did right under his nose. So I thought that was a great combo. I enjoyed that. So lastly, I want to talk about the one thing that didn't really sit well with me, and that was the entire Nicole Steele storyline. I've said every week that, like, okay, what is her point? Like, how is this going to tie into everything else? Because all she does every week is just interview people and they tell her the same information over and over. It's like, okay, who's Nicole going to interview this week? Oh, they're going to say the same thing. And she interviewed that same guy who's like teaching the police class. And I felt like his condemnation of the war on drugs was so heavy-handed. Like, it didn't even feel like talking to a regular person. It felt like talking to somebody who was doing like a monologue in a play or something like that. Like, his outrage did not feel authentic. Maybe that guy's just not a good actor. I don't know, but that scene just didn't land with me. It was like he was way over the top with his like, it felt very much like virtue signaling, like you might see on Twitter. Like, it felt like the personification of that. Like, he's way over the top. Like, look how much I hate police corruption, and I'm sure that's real, and that's a real guy, and that's how he really feels. So maybe it's in that actor's performance, but for whatever reason, both times we saw that guy, I did not buy his performance. I thought he was doing way too much. But we see Nicole do these interviews every week, and then ultimately we end up in a place where she's like, yeah, ain't nothing gonna work. This shit ain't even worth it. I'm out. Like, what? You could have took all that out the show. Like, if that's where she was gonna end up, was like, oh, this war on drugs, they ain't never gonna admit this is a failure. Ain't no point to this. I'm gonna quit. Like, what was you could have took that out of the show. And I understand that they wanted to be as true to what actually happened, but at the end of the day, you're making a television show and not a documentary. And a television show needs to be entertaining. And I'm not saying it wasn't entertaining, but like, the authenticity of the real events is important, but you have to know how to toe that line between what needs to be there and what doesn't. And I, like, looking back, now that I've seen all 6 episodes, I don't know what the Nicole Steele piece needed to be there for. I feel like you even could have had the consent decree stuff. Maybe you have Nicole Steele appear in an episode and condense all of that into one episode. But that felt like a long thing of like, where's this going? How is this going to tie in? To just be like, fuck it. Like, what? But, yeah, I mean, the unwillingness to admit the failure of the war on drugs is something that I don't know if we're ever gonna get there. I think we're getting there, kind of close, but like, I don't know if we're there anytime soon. But yeah, I felt like that aspect of the story didn't really have any added value, and the fact that it was drawn out throughout the entirety of the series only made it mean only made me more invested in what was going to happen with it with each episode. So I'm like, man, I can't wait to see how this Nicole Steele shit gonna tie in. And then she just walks. Like, I don't know, that was weird. But having said all that, I really enjoyed this finale. I really enjoyed this series. I hope you guys did too. I'm going to take a little bit of a break for a while. For a while being just a couple of days, but April and May ran me kind of ragged here. And I feel like it's time for me to take a breather, get back to doing shows like this, where we really dive deep into what the show is talking about, what's going on, making sense of it, and not not just doing a bunch of shit just to do it, which is kind of what I was doing in April and May. I gotta learn when to walk away, and I didn't do that, so I spent too much time on stuff that maybe I shouldn't have. But I'm gonna take the rest of this week off. Well, that's not entirely true. I have the finale of Under the Banner of Heaven. That's Thursday. The Boys premieres on Friday. I'll be covering that. And those might be the only two things I'm covering for the next couple of weeks until Better Call Saul comes back. Maybe I'll do a Stranger Things video once I'm done with it, but I don't know how long that's going to be. I'm on like episode 3, something like that. So we'll see. But again, let me know what you thought of the finale in the comments. I will be back to give you information from that documentary. I hope you enjoyed this season. I enjoyed this season. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.